So, My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 328 has officially been released, and let's just say that in this video, I want to discuss the newly introduced characters and the role that they're going to be playing in the future, as well as talk about that time frame when all of this is going to go down. And we'll get right into that right after this intro. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Andrew, and I'm here to do my discussion for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 328, titled, No Man is an Island. That's extremely different from what we saw with the unofficial translations, but hey, what are you going to do? So in this video, I do want to go over the differences between the official and unofficial translations because there are a lot of differences to cover. And then from there, I really want to go over the new characters that are introduced and the roles that they're going to be playing in the future, as well as talk about the 3-day time frame and what that means for the story moving forward. So let's jump right into the differences between the official and unofficial translations. And when it comes to the differences, a lot of it has to come directly when it comes to the dialogue. When it comes to the prison guard that STONE was talking to, there's a lot of differences between the dialogue that has different translations, as well as some things that STONE has said. The first difference, and it's not really that major, is the title as well as the title of the prison. It's a little bit different between the official and unofficial translations, but not much to really write home about. The official translation translates Tartarus's full name as the Counterquark Maximum Security Special Prison Tartarus, which is different from the unofficial translation. But going into one of the first differences in this chapter, and it doesn't really change a whole lot, just the perspective of how we're looking at it, as well as some clarity, comes when STONE begins to talk to the guard that is on the floor, because in the official translations, they say that this guard, and the guard tells STONE to not grab the box and that it is a weapon, while in the official translations, he begins to question that he's holding it and why is he holding onto it instead of a weapon. And this kind of difference in the dialogue applies to the next page as well, when in the unofficial translations, the guard is basically telling STONE to not give it to one of the followers and to give it to someone worthy, while in the official translations, he's telling STONE to not grab the box because it needs to go to someone important, someone that is trustworthy. So the difference that I want to bring up here mainly applies to the idea of how this guard is being portrayed. In the official translation, he kind of is portrayed as being a hero willing to die and kill STONE if it means that this information doesn't get to Shigaraki and All For One. While in the unofficial translation, it seems as if this guard is pleading with STONE to do the right thing, and it just seems to be more in character and seems more likely that the official translation is more accurate because of how STONE responds to it with more respect, because STONE would have more respect for someone who is willing to kill over his values and what it means to be a hero than to kill someone who's pleading STONE to take this information. So if anything, it just makes more sense in the official translation than in the unofficial translation, and this especially applies to STONE's response. Because in the unofficial translation, STONE responds with the idea that those who want a just society are monsters, but in the official translation, he just says that he is a monster, but he wants to still build a just society and wants to see a just society. So it kind of goes against an idea that I had in the reviews that anyone that wants a just society is a monster, and it's just very simply that STONE is a monster who just so happens to want to see a just society. And then there's a slight difference between the official and unofficial translations when it comes to how STONE, how he left Tartarus, his thought process, it was a little bit different. And in the official translation, his thought process is that he needs to deliver this to someone important, and how he recognizes the guard's dying resolve as an ember. And this ties into STONE's ideology when it comes to All Might, and how All Might lit the match inside of everyone, so that even when All Might falls, there's still going to be that flame of wanting to make a just society that is going to be with everyone. So it just makes sense in the official translation for what STONE is saying and how it applies to his ideals than in the unofficial translation. And then we get to probably some of the last differences between the official and unofficial translation, and it comes to what All Might says to Tsukachi when it comes to how All For One was able to communicate with the vestige inside of Shigaraki, because in the unofficial translation, All Might has a statement that says that he predicts that they were able to communicate with the imprisoned All For One because of the connection that Shigaraki and the All For One vestige has with All For One's real body. But in actuality, what he was saying is that he does not believe that that may be the case, that All For One was able to communicate with Shigaraki between that 500-meter distance. So basically, something that I said in the review is that All Might gave this theory about how All For One was able to communicate with each other, and Tsukachi proved it wrong, when in actuality, from the official translations, it was less of a theory and more of him making a question and questioning if that was actually the case, where Tsukachi answers, no, that's not the case. It was something different. It had to do with the radio waves. Speaking of the radio waves, something else that I didn't catch when I actually did the review is that the information that was on the chips wasn't about information from Tartarus and about the people that were kept in Tartarus, but it was specifically some way to record the radio waves that kind of like destroyed the systems in Tartarus, and those radio waves had communications between All For One and Shigaraki, and that's where we got how it takes Shigaraki 38 days to be completed. At least that is the case in the unofficial translations when it comes to how many days, but in the official translations, they don't say that it's going to take Shigaraki 38 days to be completed, but that Shigaraki should be completed in 38 days. So it's less like specific, but most likely what this is implying is that there was going to be 38 days roughly for Shigaraki to be fully completed. And now that it has been around that time, they believe that they only have 3 days left to find Shigaraki before Shigaraki is fully completed. So yeah, that's pretty much all of the differences between the official and unofficial translations. So I really want to go into the idea of the 3 days and how, for the most part, My Hero Academia within the story may be ending within 3 days. So to start off, let's go over the actual timeline once again, because the fact that there are only 3 days left actually makes a lot more sense within the world of My Hero Academia. Because at first, the heroes thought that they had an additional month to prepare because they thought that it took 2 months for Shigaraki to be fully completed, but now we know it's only going to take 38 days from them breaking out of Tartarus, which is a little bit over a month, and now they only have 3 days. And that may seem confusing, but it actually ties into the initial timeline of 4 months. Because between when we first saw Shigaraki going through the developments up until he was broken out of the capsule during the war, around 2 to 3 months. And I think it leans more on the 3-month span, which means that Shigaraki most likely started this operation either end of December, beginning of January, which would give all of January, all of February, all of March, and all of April for Shigaraki to be completed. And because the raid most likely took place in March, and we've gone through the entire month of April, then yes, it makes sense for Shigaraki to be fully completed, because this is around the time he would have been completed in the first place. So yeah, the original timeline lines up. So the real question is, what are the heroes going to do within that 3-day time span? Most likely, Deku needs to get rest, but I think most likely what is going to happen is that they're going to have an impromptu or a spontaneous meeting, not only with all of the heroes that are still heroes, but also they're most likely going to employ Class 1A to help fight Shigaraki, as well as All For One. Or potentially they may use this time to do a little bit of training and actually trick the villains to come to UA and have UA be the final battleground. Because we already know for a fact that the entirety of UA can transport people from one side of the country more or less to the other. And because they know that they can do that, they could potentially send all of the civilians away before the villains attack, which is most likely going to be after the 3-day period, and have the battle be on their home turf at UA, where they could have the advantage over the villains and once again do a surprise attack against All For One and Shigaraki. And the reasoning why I bring that up is because between All For One and Shigaraki would know where Deku is, so Deku could use himself as bait to lure out Shigaraki, and by doing so, they can all gang up on Shigaraki, gang up on All For One and the villains, and once again do another surprise attack. Because we have to remember, they almost won against Shigaraki and All For One and the villains when they raided the hospital, and that the only reason why they lost is that they didn't account for Shigaraki being alive and how powerful he would become. But now they would have that information so that they can be fully prepared against Shigaraki and have another plan in place that could, in theory, help defeat Shigaraki. And we also have to account for the new characters that were introduced within the canon of My Hero Academia and how they will probably also be a part of the hero team and help stopping All For One, because it is confirmed in this chapter that 2 movie villains from the My Hero Academia 3rd movie are most likely going to be within the canon of My Hero Academia and help the heroes. One of them is the hero Big Red Dot from Singapore, and the other one is Samala from most likely Egypt, as well as a 3rd hero that I'm probably going to spend a little bit more talking about, who is already on their way to Japan. So most likely, we've actually kind of seen the silhouettes of these heroes before. We've seen Samala in this one panel along with Big Red Dot, as well as potentially the person in the middle being Stars and Stripe, even though it looks more like Eggman. But yeah, most likely they are going to be playing a big role in the story moving forward, as well as the other 2 heroes that we see in silhouettes. And if I could make a guess on where these 2 silhouettes could be potentially from, we have Salama, who is from Egypt, which is in Africa. So we have Africa, the continent of Africa. Singapore, which is technically in Asia, but then we also have Japan. So I think potentially, as well as Stars and Stripes, who is from the US. So I think potentially we could get another hero either from Australia or from South America or from Europe. And I think it's more likely that we're going to get them from South America and Australia, because we already have characters within My Hero Academia that are from Europe, specifically Aoyama, who is French, but that still doesn't rule it out. So most likely the heroes that we haven't seen in that panel with Big Red Dot and Salama, most likely, I just realized I probably didn't pronounce the name right, are most likely going to be from one of those 2 countries. And like I said, most likely they are going to come here, as well as even more powerful heroes to help fight off All For One and Shigaraki, and that most likely within this time span, they're going to come up with a plan. And from what I'm predicting, it's going to involve setting another trap for All For One and Shigaraki and have UA be the final battleground where there are no civilians, no one that needs to be protected, and all they have to do is take down the villains. It is also very possible that within that month and within this 3 days that Shigaraki has already taken out All For One, and he still continues to do this plan, but instead they have to, instead of trying to kill All For One, have to kill Shigaraki, or maybe during this fight is when All For One dies and Shigaraki can escape. Because there's also an idea floating around that this next fight is only going to be between the pro heroes and All For One and Shigaraki, where the pro heroes get eradicated, a lot of them die, and that eventually the hero students have to go in hiding, and then it's going to eventually lead to Shigaraki killing All For One, becoming the new leader of the villains, and then trying to fight against Deku at a later moment. And I think that's a good idea, but because it says that we're in the last arc, I don't necessarily see that happening. I can see the heroes falling, but I do not see that the students would be left out, mainly due to the fact that Endeavor recognizes the students as being real heroes, being true heroes, on the similar level of being pros, which explains why he allowed them to go and rescue Deku instead of having the other pro heroes help, because he believed in them. So I do not think that they would exclude the students from doing so, because it would go against what Endeavor believed that they can do and that they are ready for the challenge. So I think it's more likely that the pro heroes may fall, but it's going to be the hero students that come up, they take up the other positions of the pro heroes, and that they're going to be the ones to finally finish off All For One and Shigaraki in this big bombastic battle. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about when it comes to the hero's involvement within the 3 days and what I think is going to happen within that time when it comes to a plan that they're going to come up with to defeat the villains. But now I want to switch it over to specifically the one character of Stars and Stripes, because if you don't like her design, I don't know what's wrong with you, because it's All Might. It's female All Might. How can you not love a female All Might? And speaking of All Might, something that was said in the chapter is that All Might was her master and how she can't refuse a request from her master. And this is something that's very weird, because that Deku was the only pupil of All Might, and that All Might wasn't another master to someone else because, you know, he sucks at teaching. So who is Stars and Stripes? Well, if you saw the thumbnail for my review, as well as the title for it, I have two possibilities. One of them is that she just really looks up to All Might and just mimics her, and that even though she calls him her master, he probably doesn't really know her that well. She just looks up to All Might and just wants to be like him, which is why she's dressed up in the red, white, and blue, very similar to All Might's design, and how she really looks like All Might. So it could be that she's very inspired by him, and because of that inspiration, she views All Might as her master. Or the second thing that I have is that she's the love child of All Might. I don't know why All Might would have a child and just leave her in America. That doesn't seem like his character, but you have to admit, she looks very much like a female All Might, so you cannot rule it off the table. And it could be possible that he may have had relationships with an American woman when he was over there studying, and that she had a child who was inspired by her father All Might, but just never told him. And I can see that, but I think most likely what the actual idea is going to be is that she just looks up to All Might, wants to be very much like All Might, and that she aspires to be him so much that she views him as a surrogate master, even though they have never really worked under each other. So yeah, I just really wanted to talk about and just talk about how she looks a lot like All Might, and that they could be related. Most likely they're not, but they could be related. Also, before I end the discussion, because that's all I really have to talk about right now, a question that I want to ask you is, what do you think the abilities of Stars and Stripes will be? Because we actually do know the quirks of Big Red Dot as well as Samala, but that would be spoilers for the movie, so hopefully I can talk more about them when this movie comes out, as well as the new pro heroes that we're going to see in that movie. But let me ask you, what do you think her ability is? What her quirk is? Do you think that she just has super strength, or could it be something else? We see that she's literally standing on top of an airplane, so maybe has an air ability. Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below. I would like to read them, as well as leave a like on this video if you do like this type of content. I try to do discussions very frequently, so if that's something that you enjoy, leave a like on the video, as well as hit the notification bell to be notified for whenever I upload more content like this, as well as subscribing to my YouTube channel. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I can catch you in my next video. Goodbye!